everyone, welcome to Clear Money Tea. Today we're going to be talking about high yield savings accounts, which is a mouthful to say. So it's high yield savings accounts, or HYSAs. So everyone's aware that it's good to have savings. Typically the advice is 3 to 6 months, and liquid savings is good to have in case of emergencies. And an HYSA is a great thing to have on the way of your savings goals. So you might think, well, I already have a savings account. And yes, maybe you do, but do you have a high yield savings account? So we're going to be going over what that is, what are the other options, do you have one, and what's right for you. So if you have a savings account and you're wondering if it's a high yield one or not, it's actually pretty simple. The only difference, the main difference is that high yield savings accounts have a higher yield. So that's going to be a higher interest rate on your savings. So typically right now, we're in a high interest rate environment. So if the rate on your savings account is paying, sub 1-2%, you're probably have a more traditional savings account with a big bank, maybe Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America. Those ones are probably going to have a rate of under 0.5%. So, but if you're approaching some of the 3, 4, 5% APY, then you're likely in a high yield savings account. And that's also something that's going to be relative to the interest rate environment that you're in. So when it's a high interest rate environment, the interest rate on your savings is going to be higher. But when you're in a lower environment, like we were before the Fed started raising rates, then the interest on your accounts is going to be pretty low. And that's also when there's less talk about looking into high yield savings accounts. But with the rates we're seeing now, it's definitely a great time to make sure that your money is in a high yield savings account. So you might be thinking, well, you know what? I don't have any fucking money, so why am I going to bother opening up a savings account? And yes, you are right, probably, you know what's in your bank account. What I'm here to say is that it's still a great idea to open up a savings account, even if you don't have any money. There are options out there where you're not going to be charged fees for having a low balance in your savings account. So it's a good idea to have one of these open and kind of get you in that savings mindset as well for when you do have some, spare change and spare money to put in there. Even if it's $1-2, or a $5 monthly transfer each month that's occurring into this account, it's great to have that sort of build up and put you in that rhythm for, maybe when you are making more money and you do have more disposable income that you can put towards your savings. So another reason why you're going to want to open up a savings account, especially if you have money just sort of sitting around in a checking account, is that you are losing money. So even if the dollar amount is not decreasing, by the very nature of you not taking advantage of the interest rates that are out there, you are losing, to the time value of money. Inflation, as we know, is happening. So everyone knows that when you go to buy something and you were there 3 months ago and it's now more expensive. So that's why it's important to have money in a savings account as well. So $5,000 in 1990 is not worth the same as $5,000 in 2023. So that's why it's important to have your money in a savings account, letting it compound and grow so that you don't lose out to the time value of money. Which also brings me to the point too, if you ever have the opportunity to get $100 today, or you can get that same $100 3 months from now, take it today, because that's when you can put it in a savings account and you can collect interest on it. Kind of like when we were talking about if you have a traditional or a high yield savings account, if you have your money in, one of the big banks like Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, you're gonna be in like a traditional savings account and they don't pay anything. You're going to want to take your savings out of there and put it into a high yield savings account. Don't wait around thinking, well, maybe one day they'll raise the interest rate. So no, I don't see that happening. And the reason why too is because they don't need our money. They have more than enough in deposits. So when you see a lot too on these high yield savings accounts, the banks are trying to attract cash and attract money into the accounts. Banks like Chase, Wells Fargo, so they're good to go. They don't need to attract more money. So for other banks and institutions, they're likely trying to attract new customers so that they can either cross-sell them on other products or so that they can meet other regulations and requirements. All right, so let's say now you're convinced, you're ready, you want to open up a high yield savings account or transfer your money into one. So what you want to do now is sort of look at all the options that are out there and take into account your specific situation. So some of the things that you really want to take into account are going to be, what are the fees on the accounts? Are there any minimum requirements? Are there minimum balances to open one? Are there minimum balances that you need to keep in there? Are there any limits on withdrawals? And how can you get your money out when you put it in? So for a lot of banks, most of these questions are going to be pretty straightforward and it's not going to be anything out of the ordinary. But when you get into the ones with those super high APYs, the rates on the savings accounts are really high, then those are the ones that you're going to want to pay attention to, because they're offering the high rate, but then they also have a lot of caveats in there, right, to make it difficult for the money to leave. So, and it's not to say that you can't get it out, but there's, more hoops that you might need to jump through than another bank that still has a relatively high interest rate, but not as high. Other things that you're going to want to consider is, what is your personality? Do you just kind of want to set it in here? You want something that's convenient, or are you looking to, move your money and chase the highest interest rate? So you don't really care about jumping through hoops and you're okay doing those kinds of things. So those are all the things that you're going to want to pay attention to when you're looking to open up an account. So as for which ones to choose, there's plenty out there, and then that's where you might get into something like decision paralysis, but I'm going to help you narrow it down a bit. So really what you're going to look for, or it's going to be one that's FDIC insured, and you're just going to look for an interest rate that's not complete garbage. So once you have those, out the way, then it's just really going to be a function of some of those other things that we talked about. And then when you have that sort of list out there, you're going to find a lot of these options sort of whittle away. You're only going to be left with just a few true options to choose from. I'm going to go over a few. We can see here CFG, they have a really high interest rate. We can see anecdotally, it looks like from some reviews, it's kind of a pain to close. There are limits on withdrawals that are per day and month. External transfers may not exceed 30,000 in the 30-day rolling period, which is not great. And so something else too, when you're looking at these, keep in mind that banks can and they do lower the interest rate on these. It's not set. If you want something that's set, then you're going to want to open up a CD. But if you're opening up a savings account, just as you can take advantage of the bank deciding to increase the interest rate, you also get the privilege of having to deal with if they decide to decrease the interest rate as well. That's something that you want to keep in mind, especially when you go after these ones that have the highest interest rate on the savings accounts, is that the banks can very well decide to cut the interest rate. You're left with a bank that's maybe not easy to deal with, and taking your money out is a hassle. So for those who want to open up the savings account and you don't really have much money to contribute towards it, like I was saying, there's options out there. So one of the top options out there that I like is by PNC Bank. What's unfortunate about it is it's not open to everyone. It's based on zip code. So you're gonna want to plug in the zip code and see if this rate is gonna be available to you. You know what I like? It's a bank everyone's familiar with, has heard of. Everyone's heard of PNC. The rate is really strong. And then when you're looking at specifics, there's, like I said, it's $0 minimum to open, and there's no monthly minimums that you need to keep in there. There are no monthly charges or fees. There is a restriction on the number of transactions you can take out in a month, which is pretty common for savings accounts. So for this one, they have 6 restricted transactions. So another one that I want to mention is Primus. Why I want to mention it is this is like the kind of issue you see on these if you're solely looking out for the highest interest rate. So if you look, they're offering 5.03% APY, which is pretty high for the time period of end of January 2023. They're still advertising it, but you can't open an account anymore. So it says online and mobile bank account openings are temporarily unavailable due to maintenance and upgrades. So, and that's pretty common too, like you'll see that banks will open up and say like, oh, look here, we had this special, come sign up and you get 5% interest rate, but it doesn't last forever. They get sufficient demand and then they sort of stop offering it, and maybe they put some explanation about internet issues, but really they just don't want to sign up anyone else. But is that What's going on in this example, I can't say, but you'll see a lot of other ones out there that will do that. So New Tech is one like that too, where they said, hey, there's a lot of demand and you can join the waiting list, but we're not signing up people right now. So, but Primus, before, they're such great. It was $1 to open an account, no caps on interest, no transaction limits. Aside from the fact that people can't sign up for this anymore, they also changed their rules. So looking online reviews, it says that there's now a 6K ACH limit, inability to add new accounts. Reportedly, account balances are locked. This is something that's a little worrisome, and it looks like it was unannounced. That's something you'd want to be worried about when you're going for the ones that have the top rates, and it's an institution that you're not familiar with. And that's the benefit of kind of going with someone who's more reliable, more well-known, and maybe you're already familiar with or already bank with. And luckily, there are a ton of options that are already out there. So the ones that meet those convenience, familiarity, reliability checkboxes include ones like PNC that like I talked about, Ally Bank, Marcus by Goldman, Apple, which is also backed by Goldman, Barclays, Lending Club, Empower/Personal Capital. Those are ones that people might be more familiar with or already have a relationship with. Maybe you're already using Personal Capital, or you already have a bunch of Apple shit, and so you want that one. Like I said, there's a ton out there. The interest rates on all of those are all pretty solid. They're not the highest out there, but they're certainly not the lowest out there. So yeah, those are all pretty reasonable options. And outside of high yield savings accounts, there are a bunch of other options that are out there too. If you're looking to keep your money safe and still get a return on it, there's money market accounts, money market funds, CDs, there's dividend paying ETFs for companies, and there's, of course, there's US government securities. It doesn't really get much more safe than that. But overall, I understand we're in a tough economy, so not everyone has spare money that they can set aside, but if you can, this is a great option. And even if you can't, it's still a great option to try and even just put a few dollars in there. You know, it might seem like it's pointless or hopeless. Why should you even be saving money? Homeownership is out of reach now for a lot of people. There's so much going on. But what I would say, this like one singular act of opening a high yield savings account, or just in general putting money aside towards your future, it's one thing that you can do that puts you in the mindset to not give up when literally everything is stacked against you. Yeah, so thanks for stopping by. Please like, comment, subscribe. That's it. Bye.